Hello everyone, and my name is Ranjitha. I'm a part of the MVC Academy team. I'm glad to meet you here today for our conversation with Ceri Buckmaster, who should be joining us in a moment. Let me just... So Ceri, I can see that you've joined us. So could you, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a video icon with a plus image. Yes, I see your request. In this, I see back to entities here. Hi, Lenny Jam, thank you for joining us. Please say hi, and I see Candice as well. Thank you, everyone. So if you'd like to say hi, please leave a comment for Ceri and me. And if you have a question that you'd like Ceri to answer, you can share that, and I'll bring that up with her during our conversations as well. So hi, Ceri.
Hi,
and
Ranjitha.
welcome.
Thank
you for joining us today. I'm so glad to have you here, and I'm excited for this conversation.
Me too. Yeah. What should we talk about?
Yeah, let's talk about something we rarely talk about most of the time. That's conflict. Before we do, I just want to say hi to a couple of other people who've just joined us now. Hi, Lenny Jam and Impact Institute. Thank you so much. We're glad you're joining us for this conversation. So Ceri, you're one of the facilitators for our upcoming course, Building Restorative Systems for Transforming Conflict. Let's talk about the topic itself. I know you've done some work in conflict transformation. What drew you towards that space? Like, what makes someone say, I want to look at how people fight, and I want to help them fight better?
It's really interesting what drew me to it. Ever since I started working with and exploring nonviolent communication, it was always the part working with conflict which appealed to me. Kind of like being with the part that people don't want to be with, that people want to run away from. It always appealed to me, and I always felt there's so much need to be able to be with conflict in a different way. So it's and the more I've kind of explored it, the more I love doing it, because it's incredibly intimate being with people alongside their conflicts, and feels really connecting, and it's really satisfying when we can transform things.
Yeah. And you know, while we're speaking about this, and I'm thinking back to my childhood and all of my life actually, where I've never been, like, nobody ever sat me down and said, hey, conflict happens and this is how you can actually make space for that in your relationships. And I'm sure this is true for so many of us, that we grow up thinking conflict is bad because of how we see conflict handled around us. Yeah, what do you have to say about this? Is conflict truly as bad as we think it is?
Well, I mean, it's one of the things that we cover on the course, how to reframe conflict into something that's generative and supportive, and even we kind of need it. Conflict creates positive change if we have a mindset that can see that and can embrace it. So that's definitely the first part of the course. We're kind of changing our individual and collective mindset so that we can look for positive change in conflict, and change that really needs to happen. And previous participants have all said that that really embodying that shift in themselves makes a massive difference. So to walk towards conflict rather than running away from it. And there's various ways that we might come onto. There's various ways that we can do that. But just talking about conflict and holding space for it, as you said, you know, as when we're children, we're not kind of taught how to hold space and how to be alongside difficult disagreements, or when we're just in different positions with people. So really, in the course, we really sort of slow down and allow space to be in different positions.
Yeah. So I want to take a moment to say hi to everyone. I see a whole bunch of hearts popping up at the bottom, and I'm guessing that's people really resonating with what you're sharing with us. And to those of you who've just joined us, please say hi in the comments if you'd like, maybe where you're from or your name. And if you have any questions that you'd like me to, bring up in this conversation, please leave it as a comment below. So we're talking about conflict, and you talked about you used the word generative, addressing conflict in a generative way. What does that really mean?
Yeah, I think generative comes back to creating change, generates change. So, if we think of conflict as at its essence, just some kind of feedback. And the relationship between conflict and feedback is very, very close. So when people are thinking they're giving feedback, or they are giving feedback and it's not heard, that will then create conflict. The lack of hearing feedback, the lack of being heard, or the lack of acknowledgement will cause conflict. So the more we can create space for feedback and acknowledgement, this is kind of all of the preemptive work and the more relational work, which leads to less conflict, or a better foundation to deal with conflict when it does come. And often we work with people who are working in very hierarchical organizations, big corporate hierarchical organizations, and they're always asking, how can we work with conflict more restoratively and generatively in an organization that has structures that really don't support? And the only way to start doing that, or one of the first ways to start doing that, is to really start changing the culture at the sort of relational level. So there are many ways you can do that by, ensuring that you have check-ins at the beginning of meetings, ensuring that people can know some of the skills of MVC. For example, they know how to make a request, a clear request, or people know how to acknowledge when someone has spoken. All of these relational things create the foundations towards being able to address conflict, even in very challenging and more hostile environments.
It's interesting you say that. I want to say something about it, but before that, I want to say hi to Apanandis, who's saying hi from Portugal, and Taufika, I hope I got your name right, who says hi from Nigeria. Thank you for joining us. So you talked about, so you're talking about all these little things we can do to build into the culture a sort of capacity to respond to conflict. And that's very interesting because I think until I discovered NVC, or even much later, how I responded to conflict was, oh my God, I hope it never shows up. And if it does, and I absolutely cannot avoid it, then let's face it, which is very different from what you're sharing, which is almost like a preparation for being able to hold conflict itself.
Yeah, definitely preparation. Because I think even if you know MVC, when there is conflict, kind of MVC goes out the window in a way. We still have the same nervous system responses. We still go into fight, flight, and freeze. And knowing how you are when conflict comes is part of the preparation. So really spending time with what goes on in my body when there is conflict. Which of those are kind of nervous system responses? Which of that, am I in fight response? Am I running away? Am I freezing? And really kind of giving some space to resource yourself when those things happen. But knowing all of this ahead of time is really supportive. And that is something that you can do in groups, and it's something that we kind of go through in quite a lot of detail on the course, is how to start these building blocks of work, of embracing conflict in your groups and in your teams.
And the other thing that strikes me as you describe this is that if I'm in a group and we have all of these little ways in which we've built capacity, and we have a system to respond to conflict, it takes off a certain amount of pressure from me around having to really show up perfectly during conflict, because it's not always possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned a system or agreement, and the name of the course is Building Restorative Systems. And through the years that we've been working on this, we support people to kind of create an agreement. And at the essence, what that agreement is that we will support this when this happens. We will walk towards this when it happens. At its essence, that's what the agreement is. That we will see this generatively. We will see this as feedback. And we will spend some time nurturing the relationship between us. At the heart of it, that's the agreement. That's a kind of the system that I want to be in anyway, where people have this in their beings, that when conflict happens, it's not the end of the world. It just happens, and we're going to support each other through it.
And Lenny Jam says, seeing conflicts as feedback is very helpful. Cannot agree more. It's a cultural and relational thing.
Yeah.
And I want to speak a little bit more to this, the idea of agreeing to hold conflict generatively, because conflict for me, for a very large part of my life, has meant let's find the culprit and punish them. And the punishment, of course, can look very different in different contexts. It could be as simple as, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I say simple, but it's far from simple. Or it could be all the way to our justice systems where punishment is delivered. And you know, the course is also about restorative systems. So how is this different from that way of looking at conflict? Before you answer, hello to everyone who's just joined us. If you have a question, leave it in the comments or just say hi and let us know where you're joining us from. Please go ahead, Ceri.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is really important. The pull into punitive responses is in us, you know, that's in us in our fight response. I'm going to do back to you what you did to me. That is really in us. So we need a lot of support and resource to do things differently. And that's one thing that I have learned working with conflict and being involved in conflicts as well, where we've had in some of the groups that I've worked in, I've been part of conflict processes. We need a lot more support for ourselves than we think we do, even if we know MVC, even if we are conflict practitioners. We need that really slow and grounded support to move through our fight and flight and freeze responses to get to more social engagement, which is, you know, for MVC, it's feelings and needs. We need support to go through that.
Yes. So Sabrina, reconnect with Sabrina's waving at us. Hi, Sabrina. Thank you for joining us. And Gospel Youth, if I'm getting that right. Hi, from Germany. All right. So you talked about making agreements, and is your course something that's open to people, say, if they wanted to show up with a group of people, like their community, their neighbors, their co-workers?
Yeah.
Would that be something? Yeah.
Yeah, we really encourage people to come with a group of people, and we've had really good results when people have come from a co-op or something together. They've come as a team, and they've been able to work through all of the exercises and practices and relay it immediately to their context, and doing that in separate breakout rooms and with support for that. So I really encourage people to come, but also to bring your colleagues with you, because I think you will benefit more if more of you have this input. So you're not alone. Remember what I said before about needing more support than we think we do. We need as many people as possible to be wanting to work through conflict restoratively and generatively. So yeah, definitely come and bring your colleagues, friends with you.
And is this kind of what people will take away from your course? Is it possible for them to apply it within existing systems?
Yes, and in a way that the 10 weeks that we offer is the beginning, and systems don't change in 10 weeks, but it's the foundational and hopefully a group of people that you can lean into for support in an ongoing way. But what you'll learn and practice on the course is looking at conflict and systems in the first few weeks, looking at our individual mindset towards conflict, looking at how we can change collective mindsets around conflict. And then we'll move on in the second part into the skills needed. So dialogue skills are really important for conflict. Being able to hear the essence of what someone is saying, no matter how they are saying it, is a skill which I think takes a lot of practice. So this iteration of the course, we're going to spend more time focusing on dialogue skills, dialogue listening for the essence of what people say. And then that skill is used in mediation, and we're going to practice doing mediations. And then that skill is used in group conflict processes, and we'll finish with 3-4 weeks of various different group conflict processes that we've come across, that we work with. Because responding to conflict in groups it's going to depend every time. There's no one process that works for every situation. So it's a very kind of agile place to be in. We need to be really responsive. We really need to listen in. So increasing our capacity to listen when there's a lot of noise is part very important, and we also look at resourcing ourselves as facilitators. So what we need to kind of be grounded and present, and to not take on too much of the conflict, because that again is another nervous system response. Like, I want to kind of fix it. Some people come wanting to do conflict work and to sort of to fix the conflicts, but actually it's much more about being here, being present, being a kind of a whole connected human being when everyone else is in fight and flight, and handing it back to them. This is their opportunity to create a future that they can live with. So that all takes quite a lot of practice, and I'm still kind of very much beginning and learning every day. Every time I'm with a group in conflict, I need to just keep resourcing myself to do that.
We're talking about facilitators, and there's usually this belief that if you're facilitating some sort of conflict conversation, you need to be objective. And I notice how hard it is for me to be objective, whether facilitator or not. It's so hard to be objective because we're sort of drawn to taking sides because we resonate with some stances or we identify with certain people involved. Is there something you could share about that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And we talk about being not neutral or objective, but multi-partial, which means kind of being on everyone's side. So there is space for everyone to express what's going on for them and what's important for them about the context, and there's space for the other person or other groups of people. So again, that is a skill to practice as well, how to kind of convey that we really are here for everyone and we're not going to take sides. But it's difficult because conflict is such a murky thing that can suck us in, you know, and conflict wants people to have sides, you know, so it can continue.
Yeah.
And the drama is a real kind of hit, you know. We get sucked into that. We get sucked into the polarized thinking and the worst possible case scenario thinking that kind of conflict creates. Yeah.
So that's really something to think about. Rather than aiming for neutrality, which is almost impossible as human beings, can we be multi-partial, be equally sensitive to the needs of everyone who's involved? There's a question here from Lenny Jam, and Lenny, thank you for your question. It's most welcome. Lenny says, zooming out to a macro scale, I wonder what might be a helpful way to think about mega conflicts, like what's still happening in Ukraine, where dialogue does not seem possible for individuals. That's Lenny's question.
Yes. Thank you. Actually, I think it's Jenny. I think Jenny's got, I know Jenny. It comes up as Lenny, but it's Jenny. Hi, Jenny.
Okay. Hi, Jenny.
Yeah. With these massive conflicts, I think we, again, it's in a way, as you ask that question, Jenny, it reminds me of the similar conversation about how in a large hierarchical organization, when structures are very are not relational, how can we slowly create the relationality? So for me, again, it would be starting at creating the relationships and improving relationships between people who are willing and able and have resources to engaging in dialogue. I've been working on a project over the last year since the invasion of Ukraine in an organization that have a lot of Ukrainian and Russian employees. And we've been slowly working towards coming together in dialogue about the war, because employees, where possible, are getting on with their jobs, and but they're not talking about it. And that's only possible when the time is right. And it's been a very tender, and unfortunately the invasion, the war is still continuing. But people's capacity to actually name and be with what is happening has increased. And then we can resource ourselves to be with the things that are happening.
And what I'm getting from this is also not to discount the change that, you know, when we look at the larger scale of war, working with a small group of people may not seem very significant at first glance, but not to discount the value that brings.
Yeah. definitely. It definitely, I feel and believe that it changes something in the field when there is dialogue that happens. It ripples out far beyond the conversation itself.
Yeah. All right. And on this topic, we're talking about Ukraine and the war. I want to remind those of you who are watching this, and Jenny, you might be interested in this as well. On the 19th, Mary McKenzie of the NVC Academy is hosting a Q&A with Katerina Yasko, who's a Ukrainian trainer and a facilitator of Spiral Dynamics, okay, von Memugin, on understanding how these two frameworks can come together to help us get more of a sense of how conflict occurs, especially on a larger scale. So if that's something you're interested in, please take a look at our feed. There's all the information. It's a free event, and you'll need to register to receive access and the recording once the event is over. I want to come back to the, what we were talking about a little while before, and managing conflict. And I wonder if you have maybe, for those who are watching us, 2 or 3 actionable tips. How can you, if you're at a space where you're learning to walk towards conflict, what is something you can do to make a difference in how you respond to it?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things that are really helpful are spend the time away from conflict to resource yourself. So spend some time in your groups talking about what happens to you when conflict happens. Start looking into your nervous system responses to that. So do that preparatory work away from conflict. And then when you're in conflict, when stuff happens, I find it really helpful just to name what's happening. So it could be, I'm noticing what I'm feeling right now. I'm noticing some stuckness. I'm noticing that one person has spoken and everyone has, and other people haven't. So naming what is happening or naming obstacles, I think, is a really, really good thing to practice and to really ground yourself in. And I also think it's really helpful when people give you feedback, however they say it, just say thank you. And I think that really benefits both people. It benefits them because they feel acknowledged, and also it benefits me because when I say thank you, I'm saying thank you because something good has happened, and it resources myself and settles myself to then really listen to what feedback it is that they are giving.
And I saw 100 reactions float up. I'm guessing that's resonance, somebody who's saying, exactly, yes, I see what you mean. Yeah. Let's talk about your course a little bit. You're leading a course starting the 17th of January. It's called Building Restorative Systems for Transforming Conflict. And you're offering this with Jo McHale and Sarah Ludford.
Yep.
Tell us a bit about what people can expect during the course and who it's for. I'm already getting that this is going to be a lot of hands-on practice and a lot of tools.
Yeah. So I really want to again mention working with my colleagues Sarah Ludford and Jo McHale, and we have devised this course together over many years. I think we first did it in 2018, and really responding to the need to look at conflict systemically beyond what MVC can already do. That's great, but we need to look more systemically about it. So we started from a 6-week training, and it's now 10 weeks because what people really want is the practice. So we've added a lot more practice in it, and as you say, it's a lot of hands-on. We will input some ideas or some principles, and then give lots of space to apply it to your own life, to your own contexts. So as I said earlier, we begin with more of the principles and the mindsets, and then we move on to the skills needed in the second half of it.
And who would benefit by coming to this course?
So you don't need to know MVC to come to this course. You will learn bits and pieces. I think it's really helpful if you don't know MVC to also learn that in parallel, but you don't need to know it, so feel free to come. Lots of people come who don't know MVC actually, and anyone who is working with MVC or who is working in any kind of grassroots or activist or community organization or anyone who's working in the more hierarchical organizations and you want to create change, you will get lots of ideas and tips, and you will hear different case studies and stories, which will then resource you and give you ideas for what you can do in your organization.
Okay. And yeah, I also have this question. If I don't have a group, will I still be able to apply what I learn in this course back in my community, team?
Yeah, definitely. If you come on your own, there will be many other people who are there on their own as well, so you can work with them.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ceri. It's time now to wrap up this conversation. Is there anything else you'd like our viewers to know about the course, or anything about the topic at all before we close?
Yeah, just to say, come and enjoy, and see conflict as something that can create really positive change. So that's the final thing I'd like to say.
All right. Thank you so much. So building restorative systems for transforming conflict led by Ceri, Jo McHale, and Sarah begins on the 17th, and you can still register. You can expect a lot of insight, a lot of practice and hand-holding as you get on this journey of getting more comfortable with walking towards conflict. If you have any questions for us, please leave them as a comment on this saved video and we'll get back to you. For now, we hope to see some of you there. Thank you so much, Ceri, for giving us your time. This has been very insightful for me. Yeah.
Thank you for your great questions and listening and acknowledging all that I've been saying as well. Thank you.
All right. See you then.
Bye.
Bye.